We have to clear the way.
Hey guys, happy Saturday. Thank you for joining me for another podcast. Let's get to it. Are you like many others who are feeling confused about why the Guyana Revenue Authority, the GRA, in tandem with the government and the Department of Public Prosecution, the DPP, decided to drop all the tax fraud charges against the father and son Mohameds? If you had a busy week and are now tuning in, let's get you caught up real quickly. Last week, GRA dropped a tax fraud case against Nizar Mohamed and his son Azruddin Mohamed. In a nutshell, GRA was seeking to recover billions of dollars in combined taxes and interest allegedly owed by both men after they allegedly made false statements of income on their tax returns for several years. Fast forward to earlier this week, the DPP announced that the GRA has also dropped the case against Azruddin. That was a separate case involving the luxury Lamborghini car, which the Revenue Authority says he made a false declaration of value for when he imported it into Guyana from the United States around 2020. Note that the U.S. indictment against both men features a charge related to the said Lamborghini. These back-to-back bombshell decisions within a week blindsided a section of the public. But the authorities in the inner circle knew what they had been cooking up. Naturally, many people are suspicious and want to know why the charges were dropped. Not what the government says, but the real story. Why the sudden change in direction by the GRA when billions of dollars in taxes are at risk? What is the real motive here? Before you draw a conclusion, let's hear what Attorney General Anil Nandlall has to say about the decision to extradite while he was speaking with veteran journalist Nazim Baksh during a recent interview.
Guyana has a duty as part of its global obligation to participate in the fight against transnational crimes, organized crimes, and criminality generally, to assist in this process. And Guyana has a track record of so doing.
Wait. Hold on. Don't leave yet. We're getting to the intriguing part. Was this a political or judicial decision or both? In framing a legal argument, Nandlall says that extradition often requires an extraditing state, which is Guyana in this case, to adjust its, quote, domestic affairs. Here's what that essentially means.
It is an accepted principle, a very self-evident and established principle of extradition law, that you have to adjust domestic arrangements to accommodate extradition. Because you can't proceed, though there are offenses in both countries, you can't proceed in both countries with the same or related offenses.
So that sounds like trying to avoid the legal principle called double jeopardy. But let's stay on topic. Don't be fooled. Do not be fooled. Guyana is not required to do anything. It's a choice, regardless of the rationale behind dropping the GRA cases against the Mohameds. It appears as if they're throwing the Mohameds to the wolves.
We have to clear the way for the extradition process to take place. And clearing the way involves the termination and or withdrawal of charges that are related to the extradition proceedings. Why? Because he is entitled to that protection. The law of extradition says that you can't extradite a person in a manner that he faces double jeopardy. You can't expose him to conviction in two different processes or in two different jurisdictions. You have to choose one.
Tell me this. What is the true reason why the government is being so cooperative with the U.S., acting as if its hands are tied and its back is against the wall, as if it has no other option but to comply with the extradition request? Last I checked, Guyana was a sovereign nation. It and it alone decides what's best for the country and its citizens. And they're willing, more than willing, to bend over backwards and do backflips and jump through hoops of fire to extradite the Mohameds. You have to ask yourself, why? So when they're doing all of this, quote-unquote, adjusting of domestic affairs, according to Nandlall, it makes it look like the United States is the one calling the shots. The United States can request an extradition, but Guyana has to choose whether or not it will comply. Do you think the United States would treat its own citizens this way and ship them off to Guyana simply because Guyana made a request? The U.S. is going to look after its own interest first before even contemplating, before even considering whether or not they would release their own citizen to another country. Check and see how many times the U.S. has extradited its own citizens to a foreign country, let alone to Guyana. They are cooperating because and only because of Azruddin. You can disagree with this opinion, but it's not even so much about Nazar Mohammed. He's just collateral damage. Azruddin is a political opponent. It is him who needs to be gotten rid of. What better way to get rid of your opponent than to agree and to cooperate to have them removed completely from your jurisdiction, out of your way and out of your sight? So all of this isn't accidental or coincidental. This is coming after a well thought out and politically strategic move. One that has benefits for those seeking to extradite the men and billion-dollar consequences for Guyana's revenue portfolio. Which country gives up taxes owed when taxes are the lifeline of a nation? Now that they've abandoned the GRA case, what does this mean for the billions of Guyana dollars in taxes that the Mohameds allegedly owe the government for allegedly and grossly understating their business revenue on tax returns for several years? That's a multi-billion-dollar consequence that affects the citizens of Guyana, who are not going to benefit from those unpaid taxes. And that is if the Mohameds in fact cook the books.
Because I see this also being peddled in the public domain, that Guyana is giving up the taxes that would have been the subject of these charges. These charges are of a criminal nature. One can go to jail and you will still not recover the taxes. Right? The penalties involved here is either treble the value of what you tried to evade, or a term of imprisonment. That is a penalty. So if you serve the term of imprisonment, the taxes go. So these charges would not have yielded the taxes anyhow. So the state of Guyana has a repertoire of remedies available to ensure that taxes that are outstanding are paid through various legal processes. One doesn't have to jeopardize an extradition process to get that. And from all indication, the state will move in that direction.
Let's pause for a moment. If we're understanding the government's position correctly, after examining all the facts and consequences, they've intentionally chosen the extradition path. True or false? Tell me in the comment section. They chose to throw out the GRA cases, and by doing so, they forfeited the taxes they say the Mohameds owed the government and the people of Guyana. Anyway, Nandlall says the penalty if found guilty for this type of tax fraud is either pay triple the tax owed or face a jail term. However, by tossing the cases, this means the Mohameds will not be paying the tax allegedly owed or spending time in prison in Guyana. And that's if they were to be convicted within Guyana's legal system. All of this makes you want to ask, did the Mohameds really evade taxes? Now we may never know. Another thing to keep in mind is, dropping the GRA cases could have a severe impact on the U.S. indictment on the charges, brought against the men in the US. Think of it this way. The bottom line is they're choosing the worst of two evils. Ideologically, they seem to believe that the Mohammeds would be better and more severely dealt with under the laws of the United States. Of course, the punishment promises to be harsher. So yeah, let's just get rid of them. Let's just throw them to the wolves and wash our hands clean. The more you think of it and let it resonate, the more you can understand why they may have found it far more appealing to simply hand the men over to the US. This has very serious consequences for the Mohammeds. This could effectively end their freedom for good. Each of the men faces 11 charges as stated in the US indictment. Each charge carries a maximum of 20 years imprisonment if convicted. Now do the math. That's 11 charges times 20 years for each charge. If convicted on each charge, that's more than 220 years prison time each, unless the sentences run concurrently, meaning they serve all the sentences simultaneously, which would mean in this case only a maximum of 20 years each.